You may have heard about the class action lawsuits against some of the largest real estate brokerages in the country, including the National Association of Realtors. Two of the largest brokerage names have already settled in the millions. Of course, it's only the lawyers that benefit from these types of cases. But I'll leave it alone for now. The case basically accuses the National Association of Realtors of colluding with brokers to force home sellers into paying the buyer's broker, which they claim is clearly a conflict of interest. So a quick history. When I purchased my own home in 1993, there was no buyer representation. Every agent you encountered was an agent or sub-agent of the seller, leaving the buyers to fend for themselves, with negotiations all the way through to closing. Commissions paid were very similar as they are today, which ranges, from say 4 to 10% of the total sale price, always negotiable. The big issue back then was that only the seller had proper representation. Buyers were left to negotiate and defend for themselves. This was entirely unfair, as this is one of the largest transactions in most people's lives. So along comes buyer representation. Awesome. Buyers now have someone who's got their back and will help them navigate pricing, inspections, mortgage contingencies, all the way through to closing. So how does one pay for this representation? As a buyer, many times they don't have the funds, or lenders maybe won't allow them to pay the buyer commission, such as with like a VA loan. So we needed a simple solution. The listing agency, working in cooperation with the buyer agent, will simply offer the agent a portion of their commission, right? Simple. Fast forward to 2023, after 30 years of doing business this way, we now have a class action lawsuit which states that sellers have been overpaying commission fees for decades and paying for a buyer agent who does not act in their best interests. Well, let me say this. As an agent who has worked in this business for almost 30 years, and now as a broker owner of a small hometown brokerage with about 15 agents. Firstly, without a buyer's agent, discussing the value and virtues of the seller's home, there may not be an offer. Secondly, if the buyer isn't comfortable with this process, they may not have even been looking to buy in the first place. Third, with the professionalism of both agents, the seller benefits from a smooth, trouble-free process. Not always, granted, but a significantly better chance of closing successfully. Since 1993, this has served both buyers and sellers well. I ask you this, if you were walking into a courtroom, would you represent yourself against a lawyer with 30 years experience? I know I wouldn't. There will always be a need for buyer representation and seller representation. It comes down to semantics as to how commissions are paid. Because if the buyer now needs to find that money, offers will be lower, bank appraisals will come into play if this extra money is rolled into the loan amount, and debt-to-income ratios will be affected, so buyers may lose borrowing power. And with interest rates the way they are today, that's the last thing any seller needs. I don't know where all this is headed, as it's too soon to tell, but one thing I am sure of, when you go to buy a home, make sure you're represented properly by hiring an agent experienced who will represent your best interests in this process. We will see where this goes. Film at 11.